fallout from Standard Chartered's alleged dodgy dealings with Iran continues. It has exposed some regulatory problems, some regulators acting at cross purposes, and other problems. Agnes, you looked into this a little bit.
No matter how you feel about what Benjamin Lawsky did, I mean, one of the things that it's kind of showing is that we have a lot of regulators who are basically doing similar things.
And Lawsky runs the New York financial authority. He's a state regulator. Nobody even knew who this guy was.
Right. It's a year old or 2 years old.
Yeah, it's less than a year old. It was newly created.
And he's a political appointee, essentially. He was the chief of staff to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo beforehand.
Right.
So, this is a guy, a political guy in a new position who wants to make his stamp.
Right.
So he jumps into a fray where we've got 6 or 7 federal regulators.
Treasury was looking into it, the New York Fed was looking into it, and again, Department of Justice. But again, this is just like one case, but I feel like it's like one of these things that you keep seeing again and again. I mean, even with J.P. Morgan, when they first reported their losses, and people were questioning, well, where were the regulators?
Right.
It's like, which one?
They weren't sure, right?
Whether it was the OCC, whether it's the OCC, and again, it all depends on where the loss is or where the incident happens, which regulator may or may not be on the hook.
There was meant to be, this is the whole idea of who jumps when as a regulator.
There's supposed to be some coordination.
There's meant to be coordination as a result of the crisis. It's meant to be coordination whereby if you are involved in a investigation with other regulators, then you coordinate the entire time. And that was actually laid down.
And what Lawsky came out, he hadn't really informed Standard Chartered, we understand.
Well, apparently Timothy Geithner apparently found out about it.
Geithner didn't know.
The news flow.
But I would argue, again, like this is one of the problems with our regulatory landscape. There's never a point person, right? So again, it relies on the fact that all these individual regulators with egos have to coordinate and kind of stick together and tote the line. Like again, I just feel like that's a problem, and that's one of the things that we saw with the Standard Chartered.
But what does the coordination sort of ultimately do, in the sense that, I mean, Lawsky went after something that sounds pretty bad based on what we've read, extracted a pretty huge settlement out of Standard Chartered. What's the problem with him doing that? Why do we need this kind of coordination there?
Sometimes if you jump out as a regulator and do something out of step with others, it's not the worst thing in the world. This time, they don't forget, he basically accused Standard Chartered of being the great financial Satan for dealing with Iran. I mean, and saying we'll take your charter back.
Right.
That
was the big threat.
That's the big threat.
Wouldn't be able to do business.
Which suddenly gets you thinking, well, if you're going to take the charter away, that means we as an institution have a bit of a big problem here. We're the 7th largest clearer in the US of US dollar products, and here you are saying you can take a charter away. Well, guess what? Clients may well get really scared about that, and then therefore a regulator ends up creating potentially a run on the bank. That didn't happen. The Fed got worried.
The Fed got worried, started checking in on every couple hours.
You don't want regulators ending up being rogues themselves. They should. You don't want to cause a problem from a bit of a stock drop. Who cares about that? It's a nice headline to have. But if you actually start threatening a bank's business because you're grandstanding, then
you probably want to rope in the other regulators before you kind of get there. All right, well, we'll leave it there. We will keep an eye on the regulatory mess in the United States and be back with more Breaking Views tomorrow.